Erev Tov to everybody. We'd like to thank Shana and Ephraim Katzman for sponsoring the Dvar Torah for Parshat Tetzaveh, which is also Shabbat Zachor. And it is Le'ilu Nishmat, Shana's father, Harav David ben Shlomo, Zichrono Livracha, a wonderful father, rabbi and a chazan. So may his neshama have an aliyah b'gan Eden, amongst other things, in the zchut of the Dvar Torah, which is sponsored by Shana and Ephraim. We read Parshat Zachor this Shabbat, or as always before Purim, which speaks about the wiping out of Amalek, which is a mitzvah for us to remember, and when the time comes to perform such a difficult mitzvah. Much has been written about that. I don't think that there has been any time in the last couple of years in which this has become such an acute discussion after what's happened on the attack on Simchat Torah. We heard calls from people who, on the left side of the political spectrum, calling mamash for Machiyat Amalek pshuto. It was brought up, in fact, when the International Court accused the Jewish people of genocide, that they quoted that, you hear that the politicians spoke about wiping out the Hamas like Amalek. I don't want to go into that inyan. I wanted to speak a little about the identity of Amalek and to make 2 points. The first point is everybody knows the well-known chidush of Rav Soloveitchik, Rav Yoshe Ber Soloveitchik of Zecher Tzadik Livracha of Boston, who said in the name of his father, a great chidush, that who is Amalek? Amalek is any nation that rises and wants to attack and wants to annihilate the Jewish people solely because they are the Jewish people. Anyone fits who wants to do those things, by definition, is Amalek. And Rav Soloveitchik's father said that that's the reason that when the Rambam lists the people that had to be attacked or wiped out, the Rambam said that Joshua had a mandate to wipe out the 7 nations which are occupying Eretz Israel unless they converted to and accepted Sheva Mitzvah Bnei Noach. And the Rambam then adds that, and those 7 nations have ceased to exist because from the time that Sancherib came to the throne, so he was Mabalbel, or the Omot. In other words, he brought about assimilation between all the nations, and we don't know who those 7 nations are. So that is finished. And yet the Rambam doesn't say that when it comes to Amalek. So that's what led the Rav Soloveitchik's father by saying that anyone who wanted to attack Am Yisrael, it's only because they're Jews, like today the Arabs. So they fall under the category of Amalek. That was his chidush. Now we come to point number 2. This might be not arguing with Rav Soloveitchik. There are those who say that that's not necessarily enough, but there's a wider definition of Amalek and who they are. And they pose the following difficulties. When we looked at the Torah and we read Parshat Zachor, so it says that when is there a mitzvah to go out and wage war of annihilation against Amalek? Paradoxically, when the Jewish people have gotten rid of all their enemies that are around Eretz Israel, that is when there's a mitzvah to now gather one's loins and to go out and fight against Amalek. Read you the pasuk. It says, "V'haya b'aniach Hashem Elokecha lecha mikol oivecha misaviv." It shall be when the Lord your God gives you rest from all your surrounding enemies. Ha'aretz asher Hashem Elokecha noten lecha nachana, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given you as an inheritance to take possession of it. So then, Timche et zech Amalek mitachat hashamayim no tishkach. So then you have a mitzvah to expunge the memory of Amalek from under the heavens. So you can see now, so people are saying who are not holding by Rav Soloveitchik, they're just pointing out that if Amalek, by definition, is anyone who presents a threat to the Jewish people and they're attacking the Jewish people because they are Jewish. So why does the Torah tell us when there's no longer a threat, when all the immediate threat to the Jewish people by the enemies which are surrounding it has now been settled because the Jewish people were victorious over their enemies, then, and dafka then, is their mitzvah of Mechiat Amalek. So you can see that expunging the memory of Amalek and attacking Amalek is dafka when there's no immediate threat to the Jewish existence. Furthermore, the Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin says that the mitzvah to go out and wage a war against Amalek applies only when there's a Jewish king. But according to Rav Soloveitchik's definition, if there's a threat against the Jewish people and a threat to wipe out the Jewish people, we can't wait along till we've got a king. We should have to go out and to wage war even without a king. So because of these two hearot, some people say, Rav Elisha Abiner and others say that the definition of Amalek is something else amongst all the many explanations. And it seems like that the essence of Amalek is that they fought a war to break the myth of the Jewish people. The attack of Amalek is that is as follows. When the Jewish people went out of Egypt, they were held with such admiration. They were held in such high esteem. Everyone was so aglow with the tremendous miracles and that happened to the Jewish people and the downfall of Egypt. There was this halo around the Jewish people's national head. And came like Amalek. And the point of Amalek was to break that sense of honor that there is to the Jewish people. Of course, the Jewish people have to be held in admiration, because if we want to influence the world, if we want to make a difference to the world, if we want to be an Or LaGoyim, then obviously we have to be held in esteem. We have to have a state of our own. We have to be powerful, both obviously on a physical level, material level, and 100% more so on a spiritual level. But we have to be held, our national posture has to be one of pride and something which elicits admiration. Without that, there can be no influence. And that's precisely what Amalek wanted to attack. And that's what they did attack. They attacked us when we weren't a threat to them, but the whole point was not to see the Jewish people in their glory, not to see them in their greatness, but to belittle them as much as possible. When you look at the Megillah, you will notice that the confrontation they had was between Mordechai and Esther, and Mordechai and Haman was not just a matter of one's personal ego. It was all about the status. Haman, who comes from Amalek, and he's wanting to exterminate all the Jewish people because one person didn't bow down to him, because one person had national pride, that was Mordechai, and Haman understood that all of his battle against the Jewish people is going to be unsuccessful, or it's going to be successful only if he's able to break the pride of the Jewish people. Everything revolves about that. And to defeat Amalek and the mindset of Amalek, the Jewish people have to realize their worth, that we are Am Skula, a treasured people and a chosen people. And when we ourselves understand this elevated status, that's when we start now to wipe out Amalek. And that's why we can understand why only when there's no immediate threat, like we started off in our question, because the Jewish people have been victorious. And we are now can understand why the milchama against Amalek has to be dafka by a king, because he represents, right, the national glory of the Jewish people. Only then is a mitzvah to wipe out Amalek, who wanted to dent the status and the kavod of the Jewish people. And in that way, in a sort of underhand way, to prevent the Jewish people from influencing the rest of the world, because they're nothing special. How does the Megillah basically end off? One of the great points of the Megillah is when we say, La Yehudim Haita Ora V'Simcha V'Sason V'Ikar. The Jews, after the downfall of Haman, and again the rising of Mordechai and Esther, so the Jews had Ora, light, V'Simcha V'Sason, joy and happiness, V'Ikar. V'Ikar means kavod. The word yakar means things which are precious. The Jewish people, even though they were in the Galut, they had the Hashgacha brought about some sort of expression of national pride in the fact that Haman, who came from Amalek, was defeated. That is who Amalek is. Amalek is the one who wants to wage battle on the elevated status of the Jewish people. I wanted to end off with now one thing that I always like to Ariel Sharon wrote a book, biography, and the end of the book was that he spoke about national pride, and he writes there can't be national pride without knowledge. And he says that was a problem with the education that he received. He received education, a secular Zionist education, and he says we were stripped. We weren't given the wealth of a Torah education, which would make us be aware of what it is to be really Jewish. And he says only with knowledge and with learning can a person really feel kavod, the kavod of the Jewish people. That's what we are plagued with today, that there's sections of Jewish society that don't understand what it means to be an Am Skula. So part of the Purim message and the defeat of Amalek is then the idea that we know that we are Am Skula, but that has to be learnt and to be acquired. And B'ezrat Hashem, that's what will happen. So Shabbat Shalom Lekulam and Purim Sameach.